Okay, 915 transmission video number 2. We're wrapping up the reseal. Last time we talked about the axle seals, the shaft seal, the gasket for the shift fork down here. And now this time around, we did a couple of more things that I wanted to document. We replaced the guide tube, as well as the input shaft seal that's inside, as well as little O-ring that seals between the guide tube and the housing. One thing I wanted to point out was that the input shaft seal presses into this guy, into the guide tube. There's a little stepped area in there where it sits. And before I took this seal out, because I intended on reusing this guide tube, I didn't measure how deep it was in here. And apparently that depth varies per transmission. Like it varies along different years. And I couldn't find an exact measurement called out on how far to set it into. But based on the photos that I took, the seal sits inside this raised area, which you can see right there. So what I did on this one, I pressed the new seal in, roughly centered. Additionally, on the input shaft, there's a very large raised shaft surface where the lip of the seal seals against the shaft, and it had a very shiny ring where it was sealing against. I'm pretty sure that the lip of the seal lands about halfway on that sealing surface. However, if it is a little bit offset, there was a pretty big area in here. I think about 400 to 500 thousandths of length. So it shouldn't leak from back here. However, this is just a mental note to drive the car. And just like the axle seals, after driving it for a while, make sure there's no fluid coming out of the bottom here when I get under the car. Additionally, if there's any gear fluid leaking out from the seal because I installed it incorrectly, it's going to fall down here and come out of this little access hole. Additionally, I could probably see in here, maybe it might get flung up on this corner, so I'm just making a note of that so that I can check it later on down the road once the transmission is in the car. If after driving it for some time there's no leaks, then I should be good to go. Additionally, we replaced the clutch fork right here. This is a brand new piece, new roll pin. Shaft was taken out, cleaned. There's 3 bearings in here, here, and down here, with a plastic sleeve that sort of just keeps the dust and other gunk out of there, away from the shaft, and it keeps the grease inside. We did not replace the bearings or this because there's very little play side to side. Actually, when it's greased properly, I can't feel any play at all. When it was dry, there was, I want to say, maybe 1 thou of play at the most, but right now it's nice and tight. Additionally, there was a seal up here that I added that was missing previously. There was no seals in here. There's supposed to be a seal here, and then there's a clutch arm in here with a seal above it and below it, and I have those too. And those will be replaced once the gearbox is back in the car. Last step was the throttle cable bell crank here. Removed it, cleaned it. This shaft screws into the case. Put it in with blue Loctite because it was pretty loose. Put a new split pin in here. Additionally, I'm going to need to replace this thing eventually. This is good enough for running in the engine, but eventually I'll have to replace it because the ball stud here, which previously had gotten stuck and made me cut my linkage, had a very deep groove worn in here from just moving in a very short range of motion and having no lubrication. So this surface got worn down quite a bit. However, I did manage to carefully file off the sharp edges and buff it out so it's smooth again, and it should at least work for, geez, this thing won't focus. It should work for a short while I find another one or buy another one, and then I can replace it relatively easily from under the car. That's about it. Gearbox is ready to go. It just needs fluid once it's back inside the car. So we won't do that until it's in there so that it's a little bit lighter. And that's it. Hopefully more trouble-free miles for a long time, as long as we baby first and second gear.